Today we're going to talk about my bike packing setup that I took on the Colorado Trail. Let's start with the Terravale Coronado 3.0 tires. These are the tan walls and the light and supple casing. What that means is you still run them at pretty high pressure, but they feel like they're at lower pressure. The sidewall's thinner. So the tire's acting a little bit more like a suspension component than something thick with like an EXO casing from Maxxis. They also make these in a tough casing as well, and I'm not sure what I would go with. These are super light, and they feel super light, and they roll really well, and I didn't have any problems on that chunky terrain in Colorado, which really surprised me. I was a little bit worried seeing all those rocks we hit, but they were flawless. And they were mounted on these Nike Composites 27.5 Plus backcountry bike packing rims, and these rims were incredible. And the combination of these two is magical. One thing I will say about the Terravales, they fill out like a 3.2. They are big tires, and when I was putting them in the rear dropouts, there was only like a ½ inch range that I could put that it would fit in this frame. So they do run wide, which gives you lots of flotation and lots of suspension characteristics. Don't air them down too much though. Like in the past, I would run 3.0s down to like 11 PSI. These are probably at about 25 to 27. Because of that light and supple casing, it's able to move at that pressure. So I'm impressed with them. They braked extremely well. They cornered extremely well in that terrain. They rolled well, and they look fantastic. I get more comments on looks on this bike because of the tires than any other thing. We had a guy stop us on the trail and say, "Whoa, tan walls are back. Those look amazing." And he's right, they do look amazing. So thank you, Terravale, for sending these to me to test out. And the Nike Composites rims were fantastic. I never had a single rim strike. They are very light. When you pick up this front wheel, you're just kind of blown away by how light it is. And it rolled really well. You did not feel a lot of rotational weight on this bike. With these running like large 3.0s, it almost got a feel of like a fat bike self-steer when I ran the pressure too low. So I had to keep the pressure up around the 25, 27 mark. For this bike, I normally run a rigid fork, but knowing we would be on the Colorado Trail and just how rugged it was going to be, I threw a RockShox sector on that I had, and it worked just fine. 130 mil fork, did really well. This is a new product for me. This is a Revelate Designs Sweet Roll. It's about 30 bucks. And it's a dry bag that opens from both sides. Previously, I would use that blue dry bag up front, but it was too big and it would rub the tire and fender on full compression. It was just a little unwieldy. And this Sweet Roll is awesome. That was a huge upgrade for my trip. It's got buckles on both sides, so I can unroll it and pack different things. So I've got my rain jacket on my left and my puffy on the right. When I need quick access, it's right there. It's ready to go. This has a daisy chain on the front, and to hold it I'm using the Oveja Negra front end loader, and it loops right through this daisy chain. This never moved once. It's the perfect size. I wanted a dry bag that was wider but narrower in diameter, and this fit the bill so well. It's totally waterproof, fantastic front bag. That's my favorite one I've seen yet. On top of that, I have the Oveja Negra lunchbox. I love this thing. I use it all the time. I keep my tool roll in there and things I need quick access to. This is my same Rogue Panda custom frame bag that I've been using forever. You take a picture of your frame, send it to them, and they trace it in real size so that their bag fits your frame exactly. Fantastic people to work with. It's got a stretchy panel here so the zipper teeth are never stressed. Really great bag. For this trip, I also got 2 Oveja Negra chuck buckets. These are water bottle mounts, and you can put a phone in there, snacks, things like that. Or if you don't want to put water bottles in there, you can put other things in. Personally, I think these are the most useful bags on any bike packing rig. And if I were building up a rig, I would get 2 of those before I'd get a main frame bag, before I'd get one of these. They're just so handy. You can access them with one hand. One thing, if you do run your water bottle in here, you want to cinch down the top. Otherwise, your water bottle can bounce out. I've had that happen. These are Oveja Negra bags I've been using forever. This is my Blackburn outpost cage that I've zip tied to the bottom. I didn't have a single zip tie break. I've got a link in my description to all these things, including these amazing zip ties, because as you know, all zip ties are not created equal. And here in Arizona, where our plastic sees the sun and becomes super brittle, good zip ties are a must. And for like 15% more cost, you can get a zip tie that's twice as good as the cheap stuff. So I've got a link to those in the description. This is my V8 bottle. It ended up rubbing through and getting a hole in it when you saw in the video and leaking water. So I had to put some super glue on it and patch those holes. I still think this is my favorite piece of gear on the bike. It's the easiest way to carry almost a half gallon, and it's super cheap. This was a $3 bottle of fruit punch or something, and I'm gonna go get another one. No need for a big Nalgene, and besides, this holds a lot more than a Nalgene anyway. So I'm a huge fan of that, but I'm gonna need to figure something out to pad it between there, maybe some inner tube strips or something so that it doesn't rub it. Because on every little bump, this thing was just getting beat from the mount. This is the item you guys have all been asking about the most. This is the Thule Tour Rack. This was my first trip with it, and it went even better than I expected. Let me show you. I made some serious modifications to this. All my patrons can see what it took to modify it. I drilled some holes in here and mounted one of these Blackburn cages to each side so that I could fit these bags, and that added a ton of capacity. You wouldn't think a couple cylinders that size would add much. It made a huge difference. And that was super solid, not a single rattle. Their attachment system is so cool. It's got this little ratcheting cam system that ratchets these straps on, and it never moved. I would just paracord this onto the top. I've painted it black because I did some modifications to it. With how wide these tires are, measuring a full 3.0 and maybe a little bit wider, they were getting very close to rubbing the inside of this rack, and I was a little bit nervous. I took it on a few test rides and it would shift just enough that I could feel it and hear it rubbing. So I actually flattened it out. I put it in a vise, I made a little form, I built this little jig and squished them so the tubes that used to be this big around are now flat on one side, and I've got at least a centimeter of clearance on each side of the tires. I've got that video for my patrons that shows how I did that. That was a game changer for this with these big tires. For like a 2.8, you're gonna have no problem and it's gonna fit fine, but if you're running big tires like this, I recommend that modification. I'm not afraid to modify things, you guys know that. I'm sure I voided the warranty, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can definitely destroy these things, but it responded really well. Their adjustment system is fantastic. I could not be more impressed with this little rack. It was 100% trouble-free, completely silent. I never had any rattles out of it. It was really, really neat. It performed way better than I thought, and it allowed me to use my dropper. And that, to me, on a trip like the Colorado Trail, is worth its weight in gold. It also got a lot of weight off the handlebars and put it on the back, so the bike rode a lot more balanced. In the past, even with the seat bag, I wasn't able to get enough weight in the back, and the bike kind of wanted to buck. This bike never wanted to buck. It felt really stable, really planted. It still rode like a loaded bike, but it felt great. So I am a huge fan of this Thule rack. I will put a link to it in the description. I highly recommend it. It's like 120 bucks, complete game changer. And it allowed me to run a big old dry bag up here. They have a pannier set you can put on it. I don't know that I will ever bike pack again without a rear rack. It was a game changer. Finally, we need to talk about this Advent X drivetrain. This thing is amazing. I will take this over XT, SLX, Dior, NX, SX. I'd probably take it over GX. It's extremely cheap. It's under 200 bucks for the derailleur, shifter, and wide range cassette. It's an 11 to 48 tooth. It shifts perfectly. It was flawless. At the end, I hit my derailleur hanger and it started skipping between a few teeth because I hit it on a log or something, so the derailleur hanger's bent, but the derailleur and shifting itself was so good. I cannot praise these things enough. It's crazy how cheap they are. I wouldn't mind a little bit more tension on the clutch, but it never became a problem. I never skipped teeth. It always shifted well, and it was never noisy or sloppy. So while I think the clutch could be a tiny bit stronger, looking at it on the stand when you're pedaling it, no problem. It's a 10-speed, wide range. Like I said, I think it's about 170 bucks. The shifters are $25. And it feels better than an XT shifter to me. It's got a nice, precise click. The levers are right where they need to be. They have a great feel. Super easy to dial in, super easy to work on. I am blown away by the Advent X. I would happily get rid of all the drivetrains on all my bikes for this. It's just simple, it's cheap, and it's flawless. They knocked it out of the park. So huge shout out to Microshift for making the Advent X so cheap and so fantastic. I've also got some links in the descriptions below to the shelter that I use and the sleeping quilt that I use and things like that, so make sure to check that out. If you have any questions about my gear, feel free to post them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you use in your camping as well. Thanks for watching. There's a party in the mountains, and you're invited.